The Carolina Panthers have been facing some challenges on and off the field. They thought they may have remedied that in the 2023 offseason, especially after trading up for Bryce Young to be the new franchise quarterback, but that certainly wasn't the case. Now in year 2, will Young live up to his potential under a new regime? Or will he just be a reminder of former GM Scott Fitterer's mistakes? What's crack-a-lackin'? It's your boy Broshmo, just in case you did not know so, and welcome to the Deep Dive series where we take a close look at each and every NFL team and project how they're going to do in the 2024 season. Next on the agenda is your Carolina Panthers, so let's go ahead and take a quick look, and I mean a quick look at their 2023 season because it was pretty bad. The Panthers went 2-15 in the 2023 season, with the lone bright spot probably being that Bryce Young beat eventual Offensive Rookie of the Year winner CJ Stroud and the Houston Texans. After a Week 12 loss to the Tennessee Titans, owner David Tepper fired Frank Reich and most of the offensive staff, and after the regular season concluded, Scott Fitterer was also given the can. There really isn't much to talk about here, as this team just flat out sucked. Offensively, they couldn't move the football, and the lone bright spot was probably the defense, who, despite losing J.C. Horn, was 12th in pass defense per EPA. Unfortunately, the defense was constantly on the field and put in poor situations because of how lackluster the offense was. So let's go ahead and move on to what they did this offseason. Real quick, I gotta give a shout out to today's sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. I absolutely love Underdog Fantasy because I love football, and now that the football season is far and away, it doesn't mean my betting season has to be, because they do all kinds of sports, whether it's baseball, basketball, esports even. They got you covered, whether that's weekly best ball or my favorite, higher lower on player props. So if you sign up at Underdog Fantasy using promo code BROSHMO, then they will give you a first-time deposit up to $250. That's right. That's right. That's right. That's right. That's right. So if you're going to go and bet with Underdog Fantasy, use promo code BROSHMO, take advantage of this offer, but please bet responsibly and bet within your means. As far as the roster, they chose not to bring back Bradley Bozeman or DJ Chark on the offense, but the defense took the biggest hit and lost a lot of significant snaps when they chose to trade corner Dante Jackson and edge Brian Burns, who just a year ago they could have got multiple first-round picks for. Whoops indeed. But they also chose not to bring back guys like Frankie Louvu. You have CJ Henderson, Jeremy Chin, Yatir Gross-Matos, and Von Bell. But let's see what they added to the roster. When it comes to free agency, I really like what they did with the roster and just addressing barren positions. As they went out and they got guards. They went out, they got a wide receiver. They went out and they got edge help. They pick up Javion Clowney, who really probably more of a stopgap option, but coming off a really good year, and they desperately needed the edge help. Even if they still had Brian Burns, they really had no one rushing next to him. They also signed DJ Wonham and Clavon Chason, who more of a depth piece at this point. And now it's time to address the offense. Part of that Dante Jackson trade was them getting Deontay Johnson, a very good route runner who I feel like it's a little underrated. He gets a lot of flack. And Deontay Johnson, really good receiver in the NFL. And then they get Bryce Young protection because they're not out on Bryce Young. They're not. They spent too much in terms of draft capital and DJ Moore to move up and get him. They're in on Bryce Young for at least this year. And I think he would have to look very awful for them to be out on him. So they grab him protection via Robert Hunt, giving him $100 million. Hey, fins up, big Dolphins fan. I hate to see him go, but I'm glad he got paid. So he's going to be playing that right guard position. And then they grab Damian Lewis to play left guard there for the Panthers. So suddenly you're shirt up, because last year that guard position was a mess. They started the year with Chandler Zavala as a starter, and it just wasn't good. Fortunately, he goes down pretty early with a neck injury. But they have Cade Mays and Calvin Throckmorton, and honestly, in my opinion, guys that should be started. Like Cade Mays, I think you can make a case at some point in time, maybe, but I don't think that time is now. I think he's still developing. So suddenly the offensive line with like a Ken McWanu, Taylor Moton, looking really, really desirable. And they add some depth here in Nijman. And going back to the defense, they add some good parts, like Ashawn Robinson. At this point, he's kind of a mercenary. Like he's jumping team from team, but he's a very solid run defender. And now you're adding him to that rotation with Derek Brown and Shai Tuttle. So I like that quite a bit. Josie Jewell, another, in my opinion, one of the most underrated linebackers in the league. Is he the fastest guy? Hell no. But this is a cat that goes in and he does the job well. He brings special teams experience. And you're now going to be getting a healthy Shaq Thompson. So you're feeling a little bit, you're at least feeling better about that front seven. And then they go get Dane Jackson, which for me, he's a depth guy. Like he's like, if he's like corner 3 or corner 4, you feel good. He's probably going to end up being the starter. That just probably is the case. And hopefully JC Horn can stay healthy. And we'll talk about how I feel about the corner position when we get to the defense. But they also snag, I already talked about Wonham and Chason. They retain Troy Hill. Here we go. Jordan Fuller. Oh, I love this pickup. I'm surprised that he really didn't get a bag. And I'm not saying like a big significant bag, but I'm surprised he didn't get more than a 1-year deal. Because he has been really solid for the Rams under his rookie contract. This ends up being, I think, a really, really good pickup by the Panthers and probably a more underrated one because, again, I don't hear people talking about Jordan Fuller. He is mighty nice. But let's go ahead and talk about what they did via the NFL draft, as their first act of business was to move up 1 pick back into the first round at pick 32 and grab Xavier Legette. That's apparently how you say it, and I love it. I was a big fan of Xavier Legette. I remember, I think it was our second watch along of the college football season. We're doing North Carolina, South Carolina. I'm all bummed. Juice Wells, he's hurt. He re-aggravated his ankle, which he was struggling with during camp. And Legette just goes off, and I'm just like, who is this man? First of all, looks like a man, looks like a monster. Having a field day. He had it in both speed, physicality. I was like, man, this is a cat that you'll watch out. Oh, you just made the watch list. And ends up being a first rounder. I'm very happy for him. He gives them that size and that speed, that vertical ability that they didn't really have on the roster currently. I mean, they still have like they have a body in Jonathan Mingo, but he doesn't have that dog in him like Legette. Mingo still hope for. Like there's still a lot to work with when it comes to Mingo. But I'm just saying, there's a dog, and then woof woof, there's a dog. Legette's that guy. They do move up to get Jonathan Brooks. Didn't necessarily love that. I mean, I get it that you're out on Miles Sanders. I wonder if he makes the roster. I think financially he kind of has to. But, I mean, Miles Sanders was so bad last year that Chuba Hubbard ends up usurping him. And Hubbard was actually pretty solid. So, I was a little shocked that they went out and moved up to go get a running back. But they must have really, really liked Brooks. And they brought in the offensive line arsenal. If they wanted to run the football, they got some big boys in there to help them run the football. And then in round 3, they grabbed Trevin Wallace, who's more of a project linebacker. Wonderful athlete, wonderful build, great length. Doesn't have like the nuances of the position down quite yet. They did draft one of these guys, I think just the previous year or two, in Brandon Smith, and I don't even think he ended up making it inside of the season. I think they ended up moving on from him fairly quickly. So, I mean, this ain't a 4th round pick. This is a 3rd round pick. This is a day 2 pick. They're going to invest their time in him, and They're gonna try to get him up to snuff. So I'm very intrigued. I was a big fan of Wallace, but I did know he was gonna take some time. That's kind of the problem with drafting linebackers. Are they gonna hit in year 3? Or are they gonna hit in year 4 of their contract year? By that time, you have to pay him now. It's kind of the problem. And then they get Jatavion Sanders at pick 101. This is actually about where I had him going. Just didn't have the best offseason process. And I mean, okay, Canals is a guy that will dip into 12 personnel. So this doesn't shock me. I kind of worry about Sanders' physicality. He tried to gain weight and just ended up being slow. Obviously, he was playing at like a 230, 235 at Texas. And that's just not going to cut it at tight end in the NFL. So you are using this guy as like a big slot or a tight end too, in my opinion. In the 5th round, Shaw Smith-Wade, I think could maybe be a future slot corner starter at slot corner. That's a better way to phrase it. So I like that pick. If anything, he's going to be depth. Another guy that just brings that dog in him. Jaden Crumdy, very impressive in terms of just his physical build, his athletic ability. The production was never there at Mississippi State, but I don't mind you taking a shot on that late in day 3. And then, hey, this is Dan Morgan at GM. Of course, he's going to grab linebackers. He goes out and gets Michael Barrett, who could make the roster. We'll talk about that when we get to the defense, but a good blitzer, really good blitzer there at Michigan. So let's talk the coaching staff. And first and foremost, I want to start by talking about defensive coordinator Ejiro Evero and the Carolina Panthers' decision to retain him after firing essentially the whole offensive staff. And I think it's a brilliant one. Hey, this defense played hella good last season, despite having a lackluster offense that would put them in bad positions, despite having injuries, guys like Shaq Thompson, J.C. Horn going down. He did a hell of a good job. And if you're unfamiliar with Evero, he was just hired last season. Before that, he was the DC for the Denver Broncos back when Nathaniel Hackett was the head coach. And prior to that, he was the secondary coach for the Los Angeles Rams, which now the Panthers bringing in Jordan Fuller kind of makes all the sense in the world. Like, Fuller has 3 of his 4 years there in Los Angeles under his rookie contract were really good, with one, that 2022 season, being an outlier because of injury. But Jordan Fuller, he broke out as a rookie under Evero. So it makes all the sense in the world that he would add Fuller to this roster. But he also, essentially, he worked under Vic Fangio, back in San Fran. He also worked under Dom Capers back in Green Bay. But he does adapt. Actually, it's a nice blend of both, because he adapts essentially the coverage scheme from Fangio, but he has that attacking, that blitzing mentality that Capers have. So it's kind of cool to see the blend of two. But essentially the scheme here, it's attacking 3-4. He likes to go and get after it. He's typically very high in blitz rate. You go back to Denver, I think he was in the top 10 that year. This season, he was in the top 12 with a 28.5 blitz rate. So he's going to typically be around that 30%. But coverage-wise, it's totally Vic Fangio. It's zone heavy. It's quarters heavy. It's that whole bend, don't break mentality that, hey, you could dink and dime all down the field all you want. We're not going to let you beat us for the big play. And it's actually worked pretty well with Evero and such. So let's go ahead. Let's move to the offense. Talk about Dave Canals. If you're unfamiliar with him, he's essentially under the Sean McVay coaching tree, but it's kind of like via Shane Waldron, because back in Seattle, he was the QB coach, and he was under offensive coordinator Shane Waldron there, who Shane Waldron at one point in time was under Sean McVay. But Canals, did a phenomenal job as the OC in Tampa last year, especially with just what he did with Baker Mayfield. So it doesn't surprise me that they were like, hey, we saw what you did with Baker. Come in here and help Bryce Young. Because we invested a hell lot to get him. So Canals will be tasked with that when it comes to like what you're going to see, like specifically wide zone blocking scheme that typically does a good job of kind of like scheming things up to get the ball into their playmakers' hands, whether that's like via RPO, via play action, and via bootleg, stuff like that. When it comes to, because you're going to see my coaching rankings there, and you're going to notice that when the run offense grade I gave was a C. And I know a lot of people were like, well, you go to the Bucks and the Bucks offensive line just wasn't that good when it comes to run block. And they weren't. I agree. But this is something I've kind of like noticed with like just Sean McVay in general. But you like, okay, let's talk about Sean McVay. You will see like spurts in McVay's coaching career where in 1 year he leans into the run and uses it to set up the pass. And then the following year he gets away from that and will run less. And it's like, what? Okay. Or at least the run wasn't as efficient that year. So he starts to move away from it. And I felt like there was a lot of that in Tampa Bay because the run was hella inefficient and they did move away from it and kind of like rested the game on Baker's arm at aspects. I'm not saying the run game is not going to be good in Carolina. I'm just saying I have not doubts. I have my concerns, and I'm more so going to go with the wait and see approach. But I thought Canals was a really good hire. Again, former quarterback coach. You're going to get him to work with Bryce Young. I love it. I want to see some more of it. But this is his offense. He brings Brad Isaac to be the offensive coordinator. Again, a guy that's just been around with Canals for a long time. He was the wide receiver coach in Tampa Bay. And before that, he was an assistant under Canals and Waldron. But first and foremost, this is Canals' scheme. He's going to be calling the plays. But let's take a look at the rest of the coaching staff here. Starting with the offense, as a name that immediately popped out to me was Bernie Parmalee, who I was like, yo, wasn't he with like the Jags just a year ago? He was just with the Jags, and well, maybe not a year ago. I know he was there in I think 2021 or 2022, but he did a phenomenal job in developing Travis Etienne. So I was like, okay, that's a cool hire. I like that. But when it comes to the rest of this offensive staff, I'm not gonna lie, I'm not too familiar with some of these guys, so it's gonna have to be kind of like wait and see. When it comes to the defense, of course, you got Dom Capers up in there, being a senior defensive assistant, helping out his boy. I like that. I like that quite a bit. You got D'Angelo Hall as the defensive backs coach. I love seeing former players come in and be coaches. That really just gets it gets me going. It ruffles my jimmies in all the right ways. But you got him there. I think you got Todd Wash, who I think is a pretty good defensive line coach. If you haven't checked out any of his interviews and just how he talks about the offensive line, it's just it's really enlightening. I love it. I love it. And then going to the special teams, you got Tracy Smith. I'm trying to remember. Oh, he was with Seattle. That's right. I think he was with Seattle. Yeah, he was with Seattle most recently. And if you look at some of the special teamers he's worked with, you got Derek Young. You got Jarek Reed just last year was, I think, on his way to being probably like the best rookie special teamer until he got hurt. So, yeah, man, there's some promise there, most definitely. Some of the senior staff, you got Jim Caldwell. That's super cool. He's in here as a senior assistant. Not too familiar with some of the other guys here, but let's go ahead. Let's move to the offense. So when it comes to who I list as starters, I'm essentially just saying I think these are going to be the guys who get the most snaps. Now, when it comes to the grades, it is in comparison to the rest of the league. So let's go ahead and start out with Bryce Young. I've given this whole quarterback positional group a D+. That's basically near the back half of the league in that like 25, 26, 27 range. Because Bryce Young, is he going to take that next step? I feel confident that he can. I really liked Bryce Young coming out. I'll say it. He was my quarterback 1. I had CJ Stroud as quarterback 2. He was a 3rd overall on my big board. But people are going to act like I hate him after I spent that whole season, that whole draft cycle, defending him. Stupid. It's so stupid how that crap comes full circle. But I really do like Young. I think he sees the field well. I think a lot of last year was him just kind of catching up to NFL, the speed of the NFL. And I think it'll get a lot better under Canals this season. They do have Andy Dalton as the backup. I think one of the better backups in the NFL. So gave that position group a D+. When it comes to his playmakers, I'm going to go with Deontay Johnson as a starter on the outside. I think Thielen's going to probably retain that slot role. Though you can make a good case that I'm curious if Amir Smith-Marset is going to be anything more than just kind of a gadget player and special teamer for him. If he can maybe get into the rotation a little bit here, I don't know. We'll see. But Xavier Leggett, they spent a first-round pick on this guy. He's going to be hitting the field. He's going to be seeing the field, in my opinion. They had their struggles with Mingo. Terrace Marshall can't even... I doubt he'll even see much of the field. At this point, I think he requested a trade last year. So yeah, I do think the playmakers are better. You have obvious upgrades with Leggett and Johnson. When it comes to tight end, I'm going to give Tommy Tremble the edge, but I think it's going to be close. I think we're going to see a good mixture of guys like Ian Thomas and Jatavion Sanders, but I think Tremble, with his ability to kind of be also an H-back and whatnot, I just think he's going to have more snaps than the other tight ends, so I'm going to go with him there. And I guess let's just go ahead. Let's just talk about these playmakers, right? Let's talk about the depth here that they got. So when it comes to like Jonathan Mingo, listen, I thought he was kind of a bit of a developmental guy project coming into the league, though the physical traits were gaga goo goo really good. They were. Last year, fun fact, he had his struggles. Some people might not have noticed it because DJ Chark was on the team and just sucking it up. But Migo certainly had his struggles. Like going back to what he did last year, you look at the drop rate, 8.5%. Ugh. Anytime you're in that 8 to 10% range, it's like, golly, get good, bro. Get good. Contested catch wasn't that good. 5 forced missed tackles on 43 receptions, okay, but wasn't exactly the production you were expecting from your second rounder. You have Terrace Marshall. Again, this cat, I think he's on his way out as soon as maybe soon into training camp. In my mind, Marshall's just not going to end up being on this roster next year, at some point next year. So the question is, if they keep 6, who's that next guy in? I'd probably go with the vet, David Moore. He's familiar with Canals after last season. But they also have Cam Sims, feels more like a special teamer. Actually, they got some interesting practice squad names with Jalen Coker. I really liked that. Holy Cross. I had a 7th or 6th round grade on him. Good build. And then Sam Pinkney out of Coastal Carolina. Didn't test that well, but big guy, produced well during his time for the Chancelleers. And then we could talk about the tight end room. Like I already said, I think those 3 guys are kind of like, you got Tremble, Sanders, Thomas. They're going to be kind of vying for snaps. Tremble being able to be on the field as a blocker, I think puts him as the lead snap getter there. They do have Steven Sullivan, more of a special teamer, but hey, shout out to Jordan Matthews. Still in the league, baby. Still in the league. Love to see that. And let's run through the running backs while we're here. Miles Sanders. I don't know what exactly his contract or cap hit is, or if they can move on from him. They can't. He's on the roster. It is what it is. You got Raheem Blackshear, who I think is probably going to be the lead getter for running back 4 here. You can make a case for Rashad Penny. I think Jaden Sheridan has an outside chance, smaller, more of a just speedster, home run threat. Also an interesting name to look at as a practice squad body. But going back to the offense, I think the blocking's going to be significantly better this season. I think Ikem Ekwonu probably takes that jump. Hopefully, kind of had the sophomore slump last year. Taylor Moton, unfortunately, with the line was playing bad, that typically will trickle down to your own individual performance. Kind of did. I think it may have been one of his worst seasons since earlier in his career. I expect him to bounce back at tackle. Bringing Robert Hunt, huge fan. Robert Hunt played in that wide zone under Mike McDaniels. Now he's coming here to play in Canals' wide zone. Damian Lewis, someone Canals is familiar with, former back in Seattle, so connecting dots here. The question is, who the hell's going to be playing center? Austin Corbett, and you're hoping he comes back healthy, right? Because this dude, he was coming off the ACL injury, got back, then he had some knee issues, and ended up only playing a little over 200 snaps last year. Now moving to center. That's going to be interesting. Brady Christensen. Let's go ahead and look at the depth, because they got Brady Christensen listed here as center 2. I don't think this guy's playing center. I think this guy's probably playing in his last year for the Panthers. But I mean, who else do they got? Like Andrew, was it Rayam might make the roster just because he played center at Oklahoma, but I didn't even think he was a draftable prospect. Didn't get drafted. I don't think he makes the team. But it's like, who's playing center? Chandler Zavala's back. That's nice to see. You can continue to develop him. Like I said, it wasn't good last year for him, but I liked him coming out of NC State. Cade Mays showed some flashes here and there, but ultimately don't like him as a starter. But I like him to be developed. So those are, I think, fine depth options. Nijman at tackle as a reserve is nice, but after that, they got nobody, dude. They got nobody at tackle. Ricky Lee? Who? I don't know. Hey, good for you being in the league. I don't know who this cat is. I didn't go over him in 2023. But yeah, they got nobody at tackle after Nijman. But I mean, again, you're kind of hoping these guys get hurt. At the end of the day, I still feel like this offense will have its complications. I got a D as their overall. Again, that's a comparison to the rest of the league, but Bryce Young could truly take that next jump. Maybe the run game becomes vicious with Brooks and Hubbard because of the additions of Hunt and Lewis. The receiving game, added playmakers such as Liggett and Johnson. Maybe that goes the extra mile, and we see a huge jump for the Panthers. I'm just not ready to take that jump with y'all. So got them rated as a D. Moving to the defense, and they got some fresh blood. They got some new names here with the additions of Clowney and Wonham to that edge group. I think it'll be. I don't like the edge depth. Like Wonham, I think is fine. I still view him more as a rotation player than a true starter. Clowney is their best pass rusher, but is he at this juncture is any more than a complimentary pass rusher to someone greater? That's kind of my question. So it's a little lackluster right now, but I don't think it's bad as a stopgap option. Obviously, you go to the interior. Derek Brown, man, I will come out and say I don't want to say I was dead wrong about him coming out of Auburn, but He was just someone that I knew was going to be a really, really good run defender, but I questioned his ability as a pass rusher, and it was so much better this year. 41 pressures, 2 sacks on the season. Quality. He is starting to develop into a top, like he's already a top 10 interior player. Maybe he gets into that top 5. Some people argue he's already there. I think he might be on the outside looking in right now, but there's no arguing. This dude's a stud. He's an all-star. They bring back Shy Tuttle, who was fine last year. Nothing special. Kind of is what it is. I like the addition of Ashawn Robinson to that rotation, but I think the run defense is going to be huge for this squad this season. They're going to be able to defend the run really well. Josie Jewell coming into here, I think helps that by leaps and bounds. You get a healthy Shaq Thompson back. That's great. You go to the secondary, and this is where the concerns lie for me. Again, I love the addition of Jordan Fuller. They bring back, they have Xavier Woods. Xavier Woods is really good. He's underrated, man. I'm not saying this guy's like one of the top starters in the league, but he is a solid starter. If you plug him in, you're not worried about that position. You're not worried about your safety position. You're like, okay, we got ourselves Xavier Woods. Cool. Starter. Great. Corner. JC Horn, can you stay healthy? Unfortunately, last season went down with, was it a knee injury? It was a hamstring. Went down. Can the man stay healthy is the question. Then opposite of him is going to be Dane Jackson. I like Dane Jackson as like corner 4, corner 3 on my squad. I don't like him having to be a starter. So yeah, I'm a little down. I'm really down on the potential of this coverage unit, or at least in comparison to the other parts. Well, that's not true, man. I'm pretty down on the pass rush, but I'm intrigued. I think this secondary, especially with Troy Hill back, Troy Hill's one of the better slot corners in the league, I think has the potential to surprise. Certainly, definitely. Let's talk about the depth, because especially when it comes to the pass rush grade, that's kind of why my pass rush grade is pretty harsh. Clavon Chason, I ain't expecting much, if anything at all, from him. And then behind him, DJ Johnson, someone who I had a 6th, 7th round grade on in the 2023 draft. And the Panthers move up in the 3rd round to go get him. I thought it was a bad pick then. I still think it's a bad pick. Well, he did a whole lot of nothing last year. 3 pressures. Played 231 snaps. Not expecting a jump. People looked at him. It was like, okay, you know what? This guy's a hell of a good athlete. Has none of the nuances of the position. Mari Barno's still around here. Cam Gill. Hey, dude. Cam Gill up on the roster. That's kind of dope. Iku Liatu, or Leota, excuse me. Kind of wrapping up the depth here, and it's really nothing to write home about. It's your starters, and that's it. I don't really think there's a good rotation there at the edge position. Going to the defensive line, they got Crumity drafted this year. Might see a little bit, might get 200 snaps this year. If he gets more, I'll be pleasantly surprised. Hopefully he plays well among those 300 some snaps. They also have LeBrian Ray, who's just kind of a body, little undersized. I think he's still sub 300. Again, just kind of a body. Nick Thurman, nothing to really write home about. It's like you got those 3 guys. Hopefully you get something from Crumity and Thurman and Ray. They'll maybe come in at spots and be all right. Like Ray, honestly, Ray and Thurman were okay at aspects, but I really hope those aren't guys that are going to be getting like 300 plus snaps next season. Hopefully you can stay healthy. Linebacker, man, Trevin Wallace, I don't expect to see him start anytime soon. Hopefully Shaq Thompson can stay healthy. Went down with the fibia injury. So I think as a linebacker core, if they could stay healthy, they're going to be pretty darn solid. They're going to be pretty darn good. Really do. If Trevor Wallace has to take the field, you're going to have to be scheming him up in a way to protect him because he ain't there in coverage yet. He just isn't. It's just not his forte. You got Claudine Chairless. Couldn't tell you much about him. Kind of a journeyman. Michael Barrett really should only see the field as a blitzer. But for the most part, I think they lack a lot of depth there at linebacker. Going to the secondary, man. They don't got anything after J.C. Horn. Again, already not that high on Dane Jackson. And then they have Deshaun Jamison, more of kind of just a special teamer, really. And DiCaprio Boodle, who had what, like 180 some snaps last year? Wasn't anything special, wasn't anything hot. 183 snaps. Yeah, this guy's depth. He's the most depth player I've ever seen. Lamar Jackson, journeyman at this point. Willie Drew, yeah, he was a UDFA, but he brings some ability. Like, he goes to the Senior Bowl, and at least he didn't look like a guy that didn't belong there. Like, he come in from the, I think it was the FCS at Virginia State, and showed up and, hey, looked like he should have been an FBS player. So that's solid. That's good. That's fine. But still, the lack of depth really, really hurts. Shaw Smith Wade, I honestly think ends up playing a little bit on the outside. Again, just has that dog in him. I think he sees the field sooner rather than later. The safety group, interested. They bring in Nick Scott, who at this point, solid reserve, solid backup. Nothing more, though. Jamie Robinson, someone who I really liked out of Florida State that they drafted last year. More of a box player. They also have Sam Franklin, Alex Cook, just some names. Damani Richardson, yo, watch out. Watch out. Coming from Texas A&M, very zone-heavy scheme over there. A very smart player. Might not be like the most athletically gifted, but a very smart player. Could end up making the roster. At the very least, will be a practice squad body. But at the end of the day, these are the starters that I foresee for the Carolina Panthers. But let's get to the reason you're here. And let's project how the Panthers will do this season. Let's first take a look, take a gander at their schedule, as I have it as kind of a mid-level schedule in terms of strength. It's neither hard nor easy. I have them with the 18th easiest schedule. They open the year in New Orleans in a division game, and then they will go back home to take on the Chargers. Then the Raiders, Bengals, Bears, like kind of manageable. They could sneak a win. I think a couple of wins here. They will get Atlanta and Washington after that. Their bye will come in week 11 to where, hey, welcome off the bye. You get the Kansas City Chiefs. That kind of sucks. Kind of is what it is. And looking at like the end of the year slate for the Panthers, they'll get a couple of division games, but unfortunately on the road to Atlanta and Tampa Bay. They do get the Cardinals and the Cowboys at home, but then the Eagles. Like, I don't think it's at least outside of the Cardinals, it's not the most favorable end of the year schedule. Like, if we're going to talk about like ceiling with this team, let's say they sneak a few wins that they shouldn't. Let's say they beat the Chargers, they beat the Raiders. Maybe they sneak one away from the Bears, Broncos. I think they could win one against the Saints. Hey, honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if they go 3-3 in the division. Let's say they sneak one by the Giants going into their bye. I don't think they beat the Chiefs coming out of their bye, unfortunately. Let's say they get one at home. They get the Cardinals. Let's say they beat Tampa in one of their games, whether that's early on in the season. Where do they got Tampa? Oh, right here. I gave them the win for that. Okay, so I think this is probably their ceiling. Like 8 wins is probably the ceiling here for the Carolina Panthers. Currently, the over and under Vegas betting odds has them at, I imagine it's maybe 5.5, 6.5. Let's see, 4.5. Wow, that's less than I thought. That can't be right. Yeah, that's what I'm seeing. 4.5. Okay, some places have it at 6.5. Okay, so I think the ceiling's 8 for the squad. I think realistically, with my projection, I got them going a nice 3-14. Yeah, I mean, hey, I have them as one of the bottom teams in the league. I think they will make some jumps here and there, but it's for the most part, new coaching staff offensively. Bryce Young, I think he will get better. I don't think it'll be enough to like shift them to instantly a winning team. I still think that there's concerns on the defense when it comes to the depth at corner, the depth at edge. So I just don't see them being a winning squad. They certainly can be better than this. I feel like I'm kind of lowballing their win total. Again, I mean, I'm having to make projections on all these teams in the NFL. So I'm going to have some teams hitting their ceiling and some teams hitting their floor. In this case, I have the Panthers. I think they're a little more likely to hit their floor. But let me know what you think in the comment section below. How do you feel the Panthers will do next season? If you want to take a look into next year's draft, I'm already producing my summer deep dive, my ranking videos for the 2025 NFL draft. Or you could check out the deep dive I've already done on the Washington Commanders right here. But as always, until next time, you be easy, my friends. Later.